Welcome back to another episode of The Missing Link in Your Healing. Today, Loretta and I are going to do episode 2 on allergies. And we are going to talk about the organ energetics, the general energy, emotional, psychological, spiritual, mental stuff that goes together with allergies, and knowing this and knowing what to do with it and how most definitely can be a big missing link and a tool in the journey to help yourself heal from allergies. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Loretta because she's an expert in this, trained, experienced, and uses it with her clients all the time. And Loretta and I, she helped me, and with my own allergy, which we've talked about, we'll allude to it again during the episode because I'm good now. So I'm living proof that this stuff is real and that it works. So yay. Thank you, Loretta. I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Antoinette. So allergies is quite a broad, allergy is a broad topic, right? So I'm really going to speak primarily about these allergic reactions that we often see on our skins, okay? But the background to this applies really to all allergies, so whether you've got a postnasal drip or whether you, have a severe reaction to pollen in the springtime, the basic underlying tenets stay the same. So I just want to start off by saying that it's really important that, I'm going to start right at the end, okay? So I'm going to go to the way in which you can become your own healer is to start connecting to your body wisdom and your intuition, to have your intuition guide you, all right? And your intuition is the way in which your spirit, your higher self, your God self, your divine spark, however you want to look at it, communicates to you. But it's very difficult to listen to your intuition when you've got a lot of resistance going on. And so we can have resistance on all levels of our being. So I think of resistance like static. When you're trying to tune a radio in, like these days we stream them, I know, online. But in the olden days, like when I was young, you had a radio and it had a dial, okay? And you would turn the dial until you hit a certain frequency, and then you'd get the station. And unless you actually got into the frequency band that the station you were looking for was playing, you could, if you were like a little bit off, you could hear the announcer and you could even hear the music and stuff, but it would be like, maybe like this, there'd be this noise, there'd be this interference, this sort of static. And that's the same as, that's what we experience, I think, in our beings. We have static. And there are various things that cause the static, all right? And the static stops us from being able to pick up the transmission of the radio station, in this case, our intuition, effectively. And so for different people, you're going to have different amounts of static in different areas. So some people are going to have a lot of physical static. Some people are going to have a lot of emotional static. Some people are going to have a lot of energetic static. All people are going to have a smattering of all. But we are going to have, because we're individuals, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of treatment for anything, we're going to have different degrees of static in different areas of our being. And that's why you can't have a one-size-fits-all treatment strategy, because some people need to have their physical static calm down more maybe than initially the emotional static. And some people are really good and their physical body is quite clear, or, when I say physical body is clear, like what they're doing physically is not creating a huge amount of static. So maybe they are eating whole foods, and maybe they're not eating anything processed, and maybe they don't having any toxins, and maybe they live in a beautiful place that has beautiful clean air and beautiful clean water, and maybe they're moving their bodies enough. So they possibly have less physical resistance. Not always, but they may have less physical resistance. So for them to really double down on the physical might get them some results, but they may have more resistance on the emotional level, let's just say, or the energetic level. So I just want us to be clear about that. And I'm going to just reiterate this. This is not like painting by numbers. This is a sort of a rough guide. This is a bit like, there's a map. Okay. And there's a map, and there's all these roads and streets and things, and it can give you a clear idea of where you are and how you can get from where you are to where you want to be. I know maps are also old school, because now we all have GPSs. We don't even look at the map, but old school is not always bad. and it's like a map. All right. It gives us a place from which to start. Right. So whatever I say, and it resonates with you, please don't go, oh, well, Loretta says that allergies are always ding, 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 because actually allergies aren't always like that. All right. So this is like an overview so that you have an idea of what's going on. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop on that. That was enough for the intro. So allergies are hypersensitivity reactions. Your immune system physiologically recognizes something that is generally innocuous. It can be a food, it can be a pollen grain, it can be a weather condition like excessive damp. It could literally be an altitude. It could be anything. All right, some sort of external circumstance that your body sees as an enemy and mounts an immune response against. The other part of the hypersensitivity part of it is that not only does something that's innocuous or innocent or not actually an enemy get treated like an enemy by your immune system, but your immune system completely overreacts. So, instead, let's just make an assumption that it's a particular food. So when the byproducts of that food is in your bloodstream or it's in your digestive tract, assuming you've got 100 units, instead of just sending 100 little soldier cells, white blood cells, to go and inactivate the 100 units of whatever it is that your immune system thinks is bad for you, it'll send 10,000. And those 10, imagine you've got like 10,000 soldiers and they're all emptying all their ammunition. And that actually triggers a massive inflammatory reaction. So it's a hypersensitivity it's a hypersensitivity on two levels. It's reacting to something that actually isn't a problem normally, and it's an overreaction. So the first thing we want to think about when we think about hypersensitivity in terms of the organ energetics is the liver, because your liver is the organ of hypersensitivity in the body. So when you start becoming hypersensitive to food, chemicals, external circumstances, toxins. So let's say that you are fine with alcohol. You can have 2 drinks and you're absolutely fine. And now you have 2 drinks and not only are you, drunk on 2 drinks, but you are horribly hungover the next day. You've started becoming hypersensitive. Your tolerance has decreased. So your liver is the organ of hypersensitivity. When you become emotionally hypersensitive, easily triggered, easily reactive, very irritated, that can be an indication that there's an issue going on in the liver. So PMS, for all those women who are listening to this and all those men who live with women who've ever had PMS, if your PMS in terms of your mood is not great, like, first of all, you can cry for no reason. That's what used to happen to me. The day before, everything in the world was massive for me. I would cry for just about anything. Okay. And then the next day, my period would start. I'm like, okay, that's what that was all about. So you can be emotionally hypersensitive in that way. You can also be hyper irritable. You can be completely intolerant. Those are more common parts of PMS. Those kind of symptoms happen because the liver is struggling to conjugate the progesterone out of your bloodstream. And it's the drop in progesterone that causes your uterine lining to come off for you to have your period. So when your liver is struggling to get that done on top of what it normally does, you can have those symptoms. So it can be emotional hypersensitivity. Sorry, I segued from allergies into PMS, right? Hypersensitivity. It can be a problem in many conditions. So the liver is the organ of hypersensitivity. In some schools of Oriental medicine, even though the emotion of the organ of the liver is anger and frustration and guilt, they say that the liver is the warehouse of anxiety in the body. So that's where we store the anxiety. So we can also become anxious. So if we've got low level of anxiety normally, when we start becoming super anxious, it's not always the liver, but it can be, right, an indicator that there's a problem there. The liver also governs and controls the health of the blood, and your immune system is in your bloodstream. So yes, you have an immune system from your lymphatics in the lining of your gut, and you have lymph nodes all over your body, and your lymph nodes make the white blood cells. But those white blood cells are immunely active once they're in your bloodstream. So the liver governs and controls the health of the blood. So you can see, if you think about the hypersensitivity and we think about the blood and the immune system is active in the blood, the liver is a place that we can think of or energetically that might need some help. Now, your liver energetically is where you store all your beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about other people, and your beliefs about the world. Your beliefs about your safety, your beliefs about your security, your beliefs about how things should be, your beliefs about what other people should be doing or not doing, right? What your beliefs are part energetically, they are part of what happens in your liver. And if you go right back to one of our very, very earliest episodes, our limiting beliefs that are formed in our early childhood, they basically become our filter of reality. And so it doesn't matter how old you are, you've always got that filter. And if you're filtering what's happening in your life through that filter of your beliefs, which were formed as a result of your early childhood trauma, and this can be pre-gestational, as in like in utero and after, then you can see why it's so easy for or why your liver is energetically is so involved in so many functions in your body. And so the liver says, the liver's positive affirmation is, I trust. I trust, like I have faith. And actually in Jin Shin Jitsu, they say that the liver controls the blood, and the blood transports the light of the spirit to the whole body. So I'm not suggesting that God lives in your liver energetics, but you can see that your liver is really important, because those limiting beliefs create our fear, and that fear creates our lack of trust in our own viability, in the goodness of other people, in what we deserve or don't deserve. Okay, so now this sounds like we're only talking about the liver, but this is really important. And your liver physically is a detoxification organ. So if your immune system is so what happens is, when you have a white blood cell that's going to, let's just say you've got this pollen grain, right? And so there's a white blood cell that comes and it engulfs the pollen grain. When it does that, it releases inflammatory agents like histamines and prostaglandins. And what that does is it calls more fighters to the area. That's why we have the overreaction, okay? And then you have high levels of these inflammatory byproducts in your bloodstream, and they've got to be removed via your liver and or your kidney. So the more you have these reactions, the more inflammatory agents you have in your bloodstream, the harder your liver works. So you can see why you end up in this cycle, this loop, right? Where we can feel like we're so stuck and we're not going anywhere. So the next thing that's really important to note is that your liver, I'm talking about the organ, okay, so the energetics of the organ. So you can go and have if you've got allergies and you go and have your liver function tested, there's a really good chance that your liver function tests will come back normal. And you'll go, oh, that Loretta, she's such an idiot. There's nothing, she said it was my liver, there's nothing wrong with my liver. So first of all, let me just say that we can only measure 3 liver enzymes, and we know there are about 500 of them in the liver. So the fact that the 3 that we can measure are normal doesn't necessarily mean that your liver function is normal, just saying. And by the time your liver functions are abnormal, you've actually got a disease of the liver, like as in your liver is becoming so dysfunctional now that it's starting to look like liver disease in some form or another. Now it can be reversed, but you can have dysfunction long before you have pathology. So the fact that the pathology test is negative doesn't always mean that there isn't functionally a problem. So in Oriental medicine also, the health of the liver governs and controls the health of the stomach and spleen. And the spleen is considered to be an immune organ. And the emotion associated with the stomach and spleen is worry and anxiety. So when you have got an intolerable itch, or like Antoinette, you have like something that feels like it's going to go into an anaphylactic reaction, or you've got the urticaria and then you feel your throat closing up, there's no way that you are not anxious. I mean, it's no way that you are not anxious, okay? And the stomach organ function energy regulates our thoughts. And the spleen organ function energy regulates our emotions. And our thoughts and our feelings are based on our beliefs. Liver. So this relationship between the liver and the stomach and the spleen, I knew this long before I knew that the liver was the recipient of these limiting beliefs, long before I knew about how these limiting beliefs actually work. So you can see that it connects. There's a correlation. And the stomach and the pancreas, stomach and spleen, sorry, the pancreas is included there, governs the surface of the skin, your outer boundary. So if your allergies are coming out in a form of eczema or urticaria or some of that kind of reaction, it's the surface of the skin. It's governed by the energetic health of your stomach and your spleen. And it's your external boundary. So we've spoken about this before. You know, very often when our immune system is going completely magoo, it's because your immune system is recognizing something that isn't supposed to be there, usually innocuously, as an enemy. And on a very deep level, it's our immune system helps us to distinguish between us and not us, self and not self. And so I would argue that these limiting beliefs that then cause our thoughts and our feelings, they effectively, that's part of our egoic self, the small you, and you, the big you, is that part of you that's eternal. And most of us identify so much with that egoic small us that we see that this is all we are. This is all we are, but that's not all we are. It's only a small part of who we are. And so we think that that's ourself, and it creates all this confusion within us. And so we start becoming conflicted about what is me and what is not me. And because we've got a whole part of us that we haven't integrated effectively. And our immune system is very often showing us where that integration or that alignment is not actually effectively aligned or not integrated. And this is where it can be something like you can have had a trauma in the past. So if you listen to our last episode and we explained that retrieval process that I did with Antoinette, you can go along the timeline of your life and you can have a trauma that happened in your past where energetically you have left a part of your energy in the trauma. That's a not integrated. That's a part of you that isn't part of you. You just haven't integrated it fully. And so whenever we have these fragments that we haven't looked at because we don't know about them, or we haven't healed them because we don't know how, and we just don't know, right? This is not an indictment of anyone. What ends up happening is we can have a disruption in our immune system to help to get us to that point where we can do the integration. So the story gets a little bit more complicated because the stomach and pancreas controls the health of the liver, of the kidney and bladder organ function energy. And the kidney and bladder organ function energy supports the liver. So we have this little triangle, okay? And the kidney and bladder organ function energy has got to do with fear. And it's got to do with the health of our adrenal glands and how we regulate our stress response in our body. So in Chinese medicine, they say that the only way that something that is foreign to the body can get into the body if there's a weakness between the stomach, spleen, surface of the skin, and the bladder and the kidney. When there's a breakdown in that relationship, because there's too much worry and anxiety, there's too much overthinking, there's not enough feeling, or there's a suppression of the emotions, the underlying fear starts rearing its head. And that compromises our nervous system, which then results in weakening our immune system. We all know when we're super stressed, we're more prone to infections, for example, okay? So it's important. I'm not saying that everyone has all of this. Please don't misunderstand me, okay? Because not everyone has all of this. But basically, when you look at this picture, you're like, okay, so if you wanted to work with this, you're like, okay, let's just assume that this is a picture of what's going on with you. What can you do about your liver? Well, the first thing you can do is you can remove any kind of toxins that you may have in your environment. So, environmental toxins like, chemicals, pesticides, chemical cleaners, things with artificial fragrance in your house. Those are things that you breathe in all the time. You could become more conscious about that. Now, you couldn't change that in a day, but, over time you could change that. So you could take that out of your environment. You could become aware of your food toxins. Are you taking a lot of over-the-counter medication, for example, and could that be toxic? Well, maybe, all right. Are you eating a lot of processed foods? Yes, maybe you are. Are you eating on the run and, what's something quick that you can just pick up and sort of, I don't know, 2-minute noodles or something? Yeah, sorry, but 2-minute noodles are not good, eh? I'm just going to say that. They are not good for anyone, okay? The noodles themselves are semi-plastic, and that little sachet, oh my God, it's poison. Don't eat that. So can you put fewer toxins into your body? You probably could, all right? So you can do that. So that is going to physically improve it. You can examine what your beliefs are. We all have a worldview. What do you believe about yourself, others, in the world? Some people believe the world is a dog-eat-dog kind of place. And so where are you in that pecking order? Well, I'm a weak dog, so someone's probably going to eat me. Okay. And what do you believe about yourself? Well, I'm just pathetic. Okay. Well, I deserve to be eaten by the other dogs. Okay. Well, that's your belief system. So there are ways of uncovering these limiting beliefs as well, right? The unconscious ones. But what do you believe to be true? What is, like, how much do you trust yourself? How much do you trust your intuition? How much do you trust life? So again, if the answers that you get back are negative, like I don't trust life at all, that doesn't mean it's a hopeless case. But until you know what's going on, you can't work with it to actually go, well, could there be another explanation for this? Yes, there could be. Could there be a different way of looking at this? Yes, there absolutely could be. Until you know what the truth is, you can't actually find the alternative. So in terms of your stomach and your spleen, what are your thoughts like? We've spoken about this as well, right? So one of the exercises that I gave you in one of the early episodes was Set A. It's called Set A. William Whitecloud, it's one of his exercises. He calls it Set A. Set A is, if you're having a good time, record your thoughts, your feelings, and what does it make you want to do, right? So that simple exercise. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And what behavior is this driving? That is going to give you an insight into what habitual thoughts and feelings and patterns of behavior you have. Again, it's not good or bad. It's just information. The map is saying you are in this quadrant of the map, and this is what you're experiencing here. And you're like, well, I don't like this quadrant. I want to go to this quadrant. Great. So what's the shortest way that you go? Well, what's the route that you can take to get there? Okay. So when you become aware of what are my thoughts, what are my feelings, what do I do when I have a big feeling? Do you distract yourself from it? Do you tell yourself not be ridiculous and put on your big girl pants and soldier on? Do you eat something because you're not feeling great? Do you phone someone and vent about how bad your life is? What do you do? Do you actually acknowledge what the feeling is, locate it in your body, try and feel into what does it feel like, and just spend a bit of time with it and go, well, you know what? Today I am feeling a lot of anxiety, and this is what it feels like in my being. And I'm not going to try and ignore it. I'm not going to pretend it's not there. I'm not going to try and positive think it away. I'm just going to recognize it for what it is right now. Can you feel your feelings? We did an episode on that as well. So when you do that, you start getting the message of what your body's trying to tell you. You can also ask yourself, where are my boundaries not good? Where am I saying yes when I just want to say no? Where am I doing things that don't serve me? Where am I doing what of my own habits don't serve me? What habits do I have that make me feel worse? Now, that doesn't mean you have to change them tomorrow. You're just gathering information, all right? And then when it comes to your kidney function, we all have the big survival fears. I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to have enough resources. Like, I'm going to run out of money. I'm not going to have a place to live. No one's going to love me, and I'm going to die. Honestly, I don't think it gets too much more creative than that. Those are our very basic survival fears. And again, those are the things we never think about very often because they're unpleasant. So many of us live as if we're going to live forever. That's why we can suppress and we distract, and it's all part of being human. And we were like, oh, I'm not going to think about dying because that's just depressing. But honestly, if every day you woke up and you thought yourself, today could be my last day, because quite frankly, none of us know whether it is or isn't, right? Like, how would I live this day? If you start thinking more about the fact that you are actually going to die, it also may make you terrified. So I'm not suggesting you need to do that, but it might actually make you evaluate your life, and you may live it differently, because you may actually you may live it differently. So, I've said this before. One of the things I do when it's like not an onerous, but when I'm feeling super pressured about something I'm not getting done, like I haven't put anything on social media for so long, or I haven't sent that email to my mailing list, or I'm like, you know what, Loretta, if you die next week, how important is this in the grand scheme of things? Well, actually, not that important. But if I've got a client today, I can ask myself, how important is this in the grand scheme of things? Now, please, I'm not suggesting I'm really important, but you know what? That session could make a difference to that client. And actually, that will matter if I don't do that. It'll matter to me. And I think it'll matter to them because, they're my client, right? So obviously they must be doing it because they think they're getting something from it, right? So very often those fears that we have, we don't examine them either because we had severe trauma that evoked them, fair enough, or because we just don't want to think about things that are bad, or because we've been indoctrinated into this idea of always having to be positive, all right? And having to deny the reality in an attempt to be positive. So when we start asking ourselves those questions, we start shifting the energy. We can do simple things to shift the energy. So, in one of the previous episodes as well, I told you in Jin Jitsu, all the organs occur in couples. All the couples have a tissue that they regulate, like the liver and the gallbladder regulate the blood, and they're all represented on the hand. So by just gently holding a finger, you can, with intention, it's important, right? Because if you're just holding your finger, you're not even thinking why you're doing it. Well, there's no intention. But if you hold your finger with intention, just like this, you don't have to squeeze it, whichever one you're going to hold, right? You just wrap the fingers of the one hand around whichever the finger is with intent, choosing to balance that energy. You do that for a couple minutes, you breathe, if you can sit quietly, that can actually help to harmonize it. Now you might say to me, but Loretta, is that not just distracting myself from it? Well, no, because it's not going to actually take anything away. But what it is going to do is it's going to integrate your energy more effectively so that you can be clearer, more balanced, and more discerning. And it's going to remove some of the energetic resistance that's creating the static on that radio. So when you do the physical things that are going to serve your physical body, you decrease the static. When you do the emotional things that are going to serve your emotional body, you decrease the static. When you do the mental things and you're actually looking at your thoughts and you're like, you know what, actually, no, I'm not thinking this. I'm not going to, this line of thinking does not serve me. It's become habitual and I'm going to notice it and I'm actually going to choose not to do it. Well, then things potentially start changing. It has an effect on the resistance. And so all these things that we do decrease the static so that we can actually hear the radio, which is our intuition, which is essentially guiding us as to the next step, which is essential for our own healing. And the more we can listen to our intuition is the way in which our spirit communicates with us. I'm right back to the beginning of my story. The more we can live in alignment with our spirit. And the more we live in alignment with our spirit, the more we start integrating that part of ourselves, which is not our ego. So we can start learning about our ego. We can accept that that's what it is. And we can be grateful to our ego and our body because it's doing its best to help us to integrate as fully as possible. And we can align with our spirit so that we can start living lives of inspiration rather than desperation. So the mistake we often make is some of us focus solely on the physical. We've got to medicate it. We've got to eat. We eat right. We move right. We sleep right. We medicate. We avoid. We eliminate. We do all of those things, but we don't do any of the others. Or we go, well, and I mean, listen, I've been here. When I first started doing the work of Dr. John DeMonte, I was like, oh, this is such a relief. I'm never going to have to tell anyone to eat healthily again. Because if we just sort out what's going on in the mind, then they'll all be healed. Well, hello. I was very, very quickly disillusioned by that. I learned very quickly that that's not true. So we can't bypass the body, just like we can't bypass the mind or the emotions or the spirit. And so we don't have to get a PhD on every single level, but we do have to just do a little audit and ask ourselves, How much resistance is happening physically here? How much resistance is happening energetically? How much resistance is happening emotionally? And that's what I actually do when people come to me for a holistic health assessment. So I don't know them at all. I don't really know their history. I send them a very simple form. So I have a very basic breakdown of their history, what medication they're on, what they think is wrong with them. And then I give them a breakdown of what I think is going on with them energetically. And obviously I ask them some questions. And then I give them a simple plan. Because I know that if you can't tell everyone to go and do everything, because then we get so overwhelmed, we end up doing nothing. But you might be doing a lot in one area or maybe two areas because you're trying to avoid, consciously or unconsciously, the parts that make you the most uncomfortable. And that just makes you human. It doesn't make you bad. It just makes you human. And so the other really big thing to remember, sorry, Antoinette, I'm gonna stop talking now because I think I've run out of things to say, is to, now I've forgotten what I was going to say, bugger. That your signs and symptoms are feedback. So, the reason why I actually became a homeopath was because I was trying to balance the anxiety of my mother and my own, because when I was 3, I thought I was going to die because I had a seizure disorder. I've been thinking about this a lot. Because I actually haven't had, I've had things. I've had kidney stones and I've had gallstones and I've had high blood pressure at times. And I've had this fluctuating weight issue. But you know what? I've never really had a hectic dread disease. But quite frankly, I had a hectic disease when I was 3. I just got it out of the way really early. And by the grace of, I don't know, the divine, my mother took me to a homeopath who treated it. And I think the fact that someone saw me and actually treated my anxiety more than anything else, probably what did it. But my mother was incredibly anxious about that. And I was incredibly anxious about it as well. And my mother was always anxious when anyone got sick. So to tell you the truth, I went into the health game because I didn't want to get sick again. And I didn't want to create that anxiety for everyone else. And I projected my and my mother's anxiety on every sick person who ever came to see me. And I was like, hell, I've got to help them with that. I didn't know that at the time. I only worked that out a couple of years ago. But because of that, and because I didn't just stick to only the physical, and because of various things, actually because of my limiting beliefs that drove me, and that drove me to explore and experiment on not only myself, but on other people, my patients, as best I could. It sounds like I'm like a demented scientist. Because of that thing that was so terrifying for me is what drove me to find the connection between the mind and the body and the emotions and the spirit. Because I had something that manifested very physically, but they couldn't find anything pathologically wrong with me. And I know how terrifying that was. And I know how it terrified my mother. And so by various routes, it was fairly circuitous, I became a homeopath. And then realized, I don't know enough. Then became like an energetic what. There was this stuff is a bit out there, but Okay, so my point is, because I realized early on that disease doesn't have to be it's not a punishment, it's not random, and that it's a message. Because it's a message. When you realize it's a message, sometimes the message can be scary. Sometimes the message can be, you got to sort this stuff out because otherwise you're going to die. It can be really terrifying. But you know what? When you're prepared to listen to the message, even if you don't know how to interpret it, it will guide you to someone who can help you. And that's how, when we look back, we can see all the threads in our healing that happen over time. Antoinette, I'm going to hand over to you now because I've been talking for forever.
That's okay. You had magnificent overview. Thank you. So every moment was valuable. Just to bring it full circle, maybe everything you've said is that, yes, the body through its symptoms, and sometimes terrifyingly so, like I've had an allergy recently, I had cancer 7 years ago. The body will bring to us Something we don't know, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So the resistance isn't even always conscious. It's just that there's a missing link somewhere and we may not know it, or there's some part of this integration between ego and higher self still needs to be done. It's a process. So Loretta started at 3 years old. So I don't feel so bad that I'm where I'm at now, still having allergies, because I really only started at 56 because I was on a very big spiritual and self-help bypassing path with extremely healthy eating, etc., before I got cancer. So yeah, I've been on a 7-year journey with this. So we don't have to rehash my story with the allergy I had, which now seems to have reached completion and healing. But if you go back to the last episode, we talk about it in detail, that I had an allergy and it turned out to be to sulfur, played out. In fact, every single part of the body and how things play out that you talked about. If I look at it, this allergy worked on all those levels. Not always all the symptoms were there at the same time, but I would very often have a red, itchy skin and the welts. But I've had the colon issues, the stomach issues, the snotty nose issues. So almost everything you spoke to came as a symptom, not always in one package. Over the few years I had this allergy. And because the allergy accelerated and became death-defying, sometimes our bodies have to take us right to the edge and give us a big message. Not because there's something wrong with us or we've done anything wrong, but because there's another layer, another piece of the puzzle that needs integration, healing. So it will reveal that. So terrifyingly sometimes, because it's very, very terrifying to have a death-defying diagnosis or to get an allergic reaction that goes allopathic. And we talked about this in detail on the last episode, so I don't want to go into the whole story, but it was choking me. It can cause a heart attack, and that can happen in a few minutes. So I've done loads of work for 7 years. So you might go, wow, really? Now this chick's still having allergies. But the incredible thing is my body just brought me to another layer and level of healing, actually, that needed to happen on the unconscious limiting belief level, which was really, the emotion behind it was terror, as we spoke about last time. And what actually needed to happen to complete the process of me healing from this allergy, I mean, time will tell, but right now I'm really good. A week later, is that, yes, I had to remove sulfur from my diet because it was the physical trigger. So I really had to clean out. But it turned out that Loretta did an energy retrieval session last week. So we did a whole episode on that. And that brought to the fore a lifetime issue in this life, a trauma and something in a past life that was causing the terror, which was triggering all these organs and the histamine and my immune system being completely out of sync. So, and then after that, the whole week, everything fired. And by the grace of the divine, I also did a session with someone else who was just practicing to become a coach. And maybe we can complete what Loretta did, because Loretta brought back that energy of mine that got left in the trauma in utero in this lifetime, brought it back from a previous life where it was the same trauma, actually the abandonment trauma, and terrifying because it was people who should have loved me and protected me. So Loretta brings that back. I have a really good week in terms of controlling my diet and managing the resistance, because that's when healing really happens, when we stop and we go, okay, the resistance, and then we can move through it. So I did manage the resistance very well, and I had a lot of very hectic symptoms because I was detoxing. But on Friday, this woman does a session with me, and I did it as a favor for her, a friend here in Morgan Bay. But what came out of it was, okay, Loretta brought back the energy from my in utero, but actually that terrified little fetus needed now a safe space in me, to be integrated within me physically, mentally, and spiritually. So in that process, somehow that safe space was created, and my intuition fired that actually on the back of questions of this coach. And I put the fetus in a golden fetus that was safe and warm here between my breastbone, and that's exactly where
a golden womb. Did you
well,
put
it
it in
was
a
a
golden
golden
womb?
womb. Sorry, I put it. She was just asking me questions like, what do you need to do next to feel safe? Because the lack of safety was causing the terror. So listen, I have a very complex past in this life and other lives and a lot of trauma. So not everybody's journey is as complicated as mine, but the magnificence of what we bring you is I'm a living example, is that this stuff can help you heal. And it doesn't all happen at once, but it unfolds. So by the end of 1 week, I went from being very triggered by the allergy and scarily, and really being in deep terror. Actually, I knew it. I knew the unconscious wounding and all that, but I didn't really know what the missing link was because I'd done so many things. And Loretta does the session on me, and boom, that was a huge missing link. And then the last missing link for complete healing was that I created a safe womb space within myself where that fetus could rest and feel secure. So the terror is gone. And for now, so has the allergy, even though I've reintroduced some of the foods that triggered. So that was a very long story, but I hope it speaks to how all of this actually fits together, and also to the fact that sometimes we need outside help. I know lots of stuff. I can give anybody that contacts me many tools. I do the work. But if Loretta hadn't done that session on Monday, so I was just lucky she's my co-host, and my friend here wasn't training to be a coach, I don't know what would have happened in terms of my allergy journey, because those were big missing links. So yeah, if the body is telling you, hello, I'm not okay, then our journey is to feel the terror and the stress and the anxiety and all of it goes with that, but to do everything we talk about and what Loretta brings to bring ourselves into alignment with why the body's doing that and what it's trying to tell us. So yeah, outside help, firing your intuition with whatever tools. And we have, if you go back to episode 1, anyone who's just listening now, or especially our first 10 episodes, I think they're building blocks to work with the ego, not to get rid of it, but to align it with divine self, so that we can start having our intuition fire. And then the magic happens, the miracles. Like I show up to record a podcast with Loretta last week, and by the grace of her kind heart, she gave me a free session, energy retrieval. It was such a big missing link in my healing. So although I wasn't in a good space physically or mentally at that point, because I do the work in inverted commas and I show up to try and live all the stuff we put out, I got some magic, a miracle. And that's how it works, actually. So if it gets scary before it gets better, or if the physical symptoms get worse, know that that very well might be a major point of healing. Okay.
Sorry, I just want to add, the physical symptoms can, especially if you do an energy kind of treatment, right? The physical symptoms can get worse because the physical body lags behind the energy. So energy changes quickly. The physical body has to catch up sometimes. So sometimes in that integrate, and when I say it gets worse, it's like a day or two, 24 hours or 36 hours. And it's not like hectically worse. It's just some symptoms that you may not have had for years can come back, for example. And you think, oh, well, that didn't work. Well, actually, it's because the physical body is actually catching up very often, all right? Or sometimes your symptoms worsen and they stay worse, not because it didn't work, but because it removed the resistance and now it's uncovered the next layer of resistance, which every single person is different. There isn't a magic bullet. You know, There isn't a magic bullet. Honestly, I spent the first 20 years of my career looking for the magic bullet until I realized, Loretta, there isn't a magic bullet. You know what? There is a magic bullet. And you know what the magic bullet is? You are the magic bullet. Your intention, your desire to listen to the message, your desire to be healthy for whatever reason, whatever it is that you want to do with your life, you're the magic bullet. So there is no system.
And that's required. Sorry, yeah, you're right. But it also, that requires, sorry to bring you back to what you keep saying, that requires us to align with our higher self, our spiritual self, our divine self, and do the work of integrating the ego. And yeah, sorry, Loretta, I interrupted you.
And
but
if you say, no problem. And if you say that you're already doing all of that, then my question is, well, then you shouldn't be sick. I know that sounds awful, okay? But because we very often, what happens is our egos, it trips us up. We go, yes, but I'm eating the food and I'm meditating and I'm da-da-da-da-da. Well, okay, well then those things are not the things. There's something else. No. It's not that you are messing it up. It's just that there's something else that you don't know. And so that's how you will be led to people and experiences and books and podcasts and whatever it is that might actually give you an idea of, oh, okay, well, maybe this person has that answer for me or has part of the puzzle. So one thing I've also always said to clients or patients when I was in practice, they'd be like, oh, I've been to so many doctors and they couldn't sort this out and I'm so much better and it's only 3 weeks. I wish I'd come to you earlier. So you know what? Every step of the way on your journey was to get you to the point where you could come to me, and I was the lucky guy who got you at the end. So I get to look super amazing. Every other healer that ever did anything for you got you to this place. So, and you got yourself here. So, take no credit, take no blame. You just keep focus on the aim. And my aim is to help people to uncover their own healer. Okay. So it's not about the healer. The essential part in the journey is actually you. And the other thing that I also want to say is, just because we know all this stuff, or if you know this and you've done this, and you've practiced this, it doesn't mean you don't get sick again. It doesn't mean you don't get a different sick. All right.
And in fact, it gets worse before it gets better sometimes. And you're doing the work.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that you don't get it. It doesn't mean that you don't get things happen to you. It's only the meaning that you confer on that. What you make that mean about you. I have an allergy, and that means that I am the da 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 da. That's the part that actually isn't serving you at all, because it doesn't mean anything. All it means is that you're getting feedback that something needs changing, uncovering, the resistance needs to be removed. Mm-hmm. That's actually all it means.
Yeah,
and if looking at it that way, it loses its power to terrify you. It's still scary, but it loses its power to absolutely terrify you.
Well, I think that it can still be terrifying, as in my case, but I think that it's just an indication that there is more to be done. And that it isn't wrong or right. Maybe that's what you mean. It doesn't, I'm not wrong, and there's no problem per se, except that I can't keep on having anaphylactic reactions. So because I'm very connected to myself on this journey of knowing what my body's telling me, and we can't always figure it out in one go or one session. But working with someone like Loretta, or someone who can, so I think you take too little credit sometimes, that can bring you quite quicker to alignment with the journey to holistically become your own healer. Doesn't mean it's a magic bullet, but because everybody's journey is different every time. Not everybody has to have a past retrieval to heal an allergy. That's where I was at and what I had to do at this point. No, am I not right?
I have to say, I haven't had a single client who's had anything wrong with them that didn't need a retrieval. At least one. Not 100, but at least one.
Wow. Well, the interesting thing is Carolyn May says exactly the same thing. She's a medical intuitive, and years ago I heard her say, if you do not bring back those energies, you're not going to be okay. So sorry that I was wrong there. Thank you, Loretta. And I feel so completely different a week down the line. So I'm living proof. Unfortunately for me, part of my role in the podcast is to experience everything we put out and then use it. I'm like, okay, well, now it's true. But anyway, Loretta, Yeah, thank you. That was amazing. I don't know if you want to say anything more.
Thank you. No, I think I'm done. Thank you. Thanks for listening. And as always, if you found this useful, please share this with someone that you think might benefit from it. And please share it by sending them the link directly, because if you send me the link to something, I click on it, I'm likely to listen to it. If you tell me about it, I'm less likely to go and look for it. So please share it. We'd be very grateful for that.
Thank you. And honestly, I'm going to just say this because I've got no investment in Loretta and her business, except I know the benefit in it is what we've brought you on this podcast and in this episode today is gold. I mean, this is gold. It's like 1 hour of stuff that could take you a lifetime to get to. So yeah, if you're interested in knowing more from Loretta's side and what she does, just drop her an email or drop us an email. So, okay, it's 50 minutes. Let me stop bye. Okay, Loretta, bye. Bye, everybody.